Camellia woke to a sharp, throbbing pain behind her eyes. The world was too bright, her mouth was dry, and the faint scent of expensive cologne clung to the sheets beneath her. Her fingers twitched against the fabric as a slow, gnawing panic settled in. Something felt wrong. She blinked against the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Where the hell was she? The sheets rustled as she sat up, her head spinning. That's when she noticed the diamond ring on her left hand. Her stomach dropped. No, no, no. She ripped the covers back, hoping, praying, this was just some terrible misunderstanding. But then she heard it, a deep, amused voice from across the room. "Morning, wife." Camellia turned sharply, her breath catching in her throat. A man lounged against the doorway, arms crossed, his lean frame wrapped in nothing but a low-hanging towel. He was infuriatingly gorgeous, messy dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that held something dark, something dangerous. His lips curled into a smirk. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Camelia's heart pounded. She had no idea who this man was. And yet, he looked at her like he knew her. She swallowed, her voice hoarse. "Who the hell are you?" The smirk deepened. He pushed off the doorway and walked toward her with unshakable confidence, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin. He reached out, brushing a knuckle along her jaw. "Last night, you called me Nico," he murmured. "Right before you kissed me and told me you wanted to be mine forever." Camellia yanked back like she'd been burned. "You're lying." Nico just chuckled, his gaze dropping pointedly to her hand. "The ring says otherwise. Mrs. Dr. Lucasar." Her chest squeezed as she stumbled out of bed, snatching the marriage certificate from the nightstand. Her name. His name. The ink was dry, the signatures real. Her pulse roared in her ears. This was impossible. "I don't even remember meeting you," she snapped, looking up at him in wild disbelief. "There is no way I married a complete stranger." Nico watched her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "Not a chance, sweetheart," he murmured. "I've waited too long for this." Chapter 1. The Stranger Who Knows Too Much. Camellia gripped the marriage certificate so tightly that the edges crumpled beneath her fingers. This was a nightmare. A joke. A mistake. She glanced at the diamond ring on her finger again, as if staring at it long enough would make it disappear. But it didn't. The damn thing gleamed under the soft hotel lighting, mocking her. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she turned to the man who had just called her his wife. Nico. He stood there, tall and composed, with an air of quiet confidence that made her want to scream. His dark eyes never wavered, as if he expected this reaction, as if he knew her. "I want a divorce," she said, voice tight. Nico just smirked. "Not a chance." Camellia clenched her fists. "I don't even know you." His smirk didn't fade. If anything, something unreadable flickered in his expression, something that sent a shiver down her spine. "Oh, Cammy," he said, voice dripping with amusement. "That's the thing. I know you." A chill ran down her spine. There was something about the way he said it, low, almost affectionate, but laced with something darker. Camellia took a step back, suddenly feeling like a trapped animal. She needed answers. Now. She snatched her phone from the nightstand, her hands shaking as she unlocked it. First, she scrolled through her call log. Nothing from an unknown number. Then she checked her messages. Her best friend Lila had texted her at 2 a.m. "You sure about this? Call me if you change your mind." "Cammy?" Camelia's stomach twisted. "Sure about what?" She scrolled further, hoping for more clarity, but found nothing. No explanation, no photos, no proof that she had willingly walked into this. Her chest tightened. "Your friends were there," Nico said, as if reading her mind. "They didn't stop you." She looked up sharply. "Then tell me what happened." He watched her for a moment before strolling over to the minibar, pouring himself a glass of whiskey with an infuriating level of ease. "You don't remember anything?" he asked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. She glared at him. "Do I look like I remember?" Nico sighed, setting his drink down. "We met at the bar downstairs. You were celebrating something." Camellia frowned. That did sound right. So she and her friends had booked this trip to Vegas as a getaway, an escape from her suffocating job and an even worse ex. "You were drunk," Nico continued, "but not that drunk. You knew what you were doing." She shook her head. "I don't believe you," he smirked. "You should. You were the one who proposed to me." Silence slammed into the room. Camellia stared at him, unable to form words. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound. You expect me to believe I proposed? Nico leaned against the counter, watching her with a knowing look. You said you didn't want to go home alone, he said casually, that you were tired of people leaving you, that if you were going to marry someone, it might as well be someone who wouldn't let you go. A lump formed in Camelia's throat. That sounded like something she might have said. She had spent months drowning in heartbreak, exhaustion, and feeling like she was always the second choice in everyone's life. But no. She wouldn't just marry a stranger because of that. I don't believe you, she whispered. Nico sighed. Then let me prove it. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward her. Camelia's breath caught. It was a video. Of her. She was sitting on a bar stool, glass in hand, looking right at Nico with a teasing smile. You know what, Nico? Her voice slurred slightly, but her tone was playful. I like you. You don't bullshit me. You don't leave. Nico's voice, smooth and steady, responded. That's so? Yeah, you should marry me. The Camellia in the video extended her hand, palm up. Right here. Right now. Be my husband. Nico chuckled. You sure about that, sweetheart? She nodded, grinning. 100%. The video ended. Camellia felt like the floor had been ripped out from under her. She sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, her fingers trembling. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean it. Nico crouched in front of her, resting his elbows on his knees. You meant every word, he said softly. You just don't remember why. She swallowed, meeting his eyes, deep, dark, and filled with something unreadable. Then tell me, she whispered. He reached out, brushing a stray curl behind her ear, his touch lingering just a second too long. I will, he murmured, but not yet. And just like that, the mystery deepened. Because somehow, someway, this man wasn't just a stranger. He knew her, and that terrified her more than anything. Chapter 2. A marriage that feels too personal. Camellia wanted out. It didn't matter that Nico had proof. Undeniable, clear as day evidence that she had willingly slipped that ring on her finger and spoken vows that were now legally binding. She didn't remember it, and to her, that meant it wasn't real. She paced the length of the hotel suite, fingers curled tightly around her phone. There had to be a way to fix this. You need to sign the annulment papers, she said, turning to Nico, who had made himself comfortable on the couch. I don't need to do anything. She stopped pacing. You have to. He arched an eyebrow, lips tilting into that infuriating smirk. Pretty sure I don't, wife. Her stomach twisted at the word. Don't call me that. Why not? He tilted his head slightly. You made me your husband. You don't get to rewrite history just because you don't remember it. Camellia sucked in a slow, controlled breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Getting into a shouting match with this man wouldn't help her case. Instead, she pulled up her texts again, her eyes scanning Lila's last few messages. Lila, you sure about this? Call me if you change your mind. She quickly dialed Lila's number. It rang, and then voicemail. Frustration bubbled in her chest. She tried again. Nothing. I wouldn't bother. Nico's voice was maddeningly casual. Camellia turned, narrowing her eyes. What the hell does that mean? He stretched an arm along the back of the couch, watching her with a lazy sort of patience. Your friends won't give you the answer you're looking for. Something about the way he said it made the hairs on her arms rise. She tightened her grip on her phone. And why's that? He let a silence stretch between them, thick with unspoken words. Then he said, Because they know. She frowned. Know what? Nico stood, stepping toward her with slow, measured movements as if approaching a cornered animal. He reached for something on the table, a folder she hadn't noticed before. He flipped it open and pulled out a piece of paper. Then, with no hesitation, he handed it to her. Camelia's blood turned to ice. It was a prenup. Her name. His name. The ink was dry, the signatures neat. This is fake, she said immediately. It's not. Her pulse roared in her ears. Why the hell would I sign this? Her eyes darted across the page, like scanning the clauses, most of them standard. But then near the bottom, she saw something that made her heart lurch. Clause 14. If Camellia requests a divorce within 6 months, she forfeits all rights to. She trailed off, her stomach twisting. The last part was redacted. What the hell is this? She whispered. Nico's jaw tightened just barely. It's what you agreed to. She shook her head. This doesn't make sense. You didn't want an easy way out. Her throat tightened. Why? He hesitated, something flickering behind his gaze. Because you told me this marriage mattered. Camellia felt like she was drowning. Nothing made sense. This whole situation was a tangled mess of half-truths, missing memories, and a man who looked at her like he knew things she didn't. And the worst part? The way he spoke. So certain, so unwavering, made something deep inside her. She tore her gaze from his and stepped back. I don't trust you. Nico sighed, running a hand through his hair. You don't have to. That answer did nothing to soothe her. She turned on her heel, heading straight for the door. I'm leaving. Go ahead, he said, voice smooth, but you won't get far. Camellia froze. Slowly, she turned back around. Excuse me? Nico leaned against the counter, completely unbothered. You think I haven't thought this through? You walked into this with your eyes open, Cammy. You asked me for this. Her jaw clenched. I don't remember that, he nodded. And that's the problem, isn't it? Silence stretched between them. Camelia's pulse pounded as she reached for the door handle and yanked it open. Then she stopped dead in her tracks. Two men in black suits stood just outside. They weren't blocking her way, but they didn't need to. The message was clear. She turned back to Nico, her heart slamming against her ribs. What the hell is this? Security, he said easily. For your safety. Her breath came fast, uneven. You think this is normal? He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. I think someone tried to make you forget me, he said quietly. Her stomach dropped. Nico stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. The real question is, why? Camellia swallowed, her head spinning. The prenup, the missing memories, the fact that deep in her gut, she knew there was something she couldn't quite grasp. The problem wasn't just that she didn't remember. The problem was that someone wanted it that way. And Nico, dangerous, unreadable Nico, was the only one who seemed to know why. Chapter 3, A Contract, a Past, and a Dangerous Secret. Camellia stood frozen in the doorway, heart pounding as she stared at the two men in suits standing just outside the hotel suite. Not blocking her, not threatening her, just waiting. She wasn't stupid. This wasn't some casual precaution. It was a statement. She turned back to Nico, who leaned lazily against the counter, swirling the glass of whiskey he hadn't yet taken a sip from. You want to explain why I suddenly need security? She asked, voice tight. Nico lifted a brow. Because I'm not an idiot. That doesn't answer my question, he sighed, setting the glass down with a quiet clink. You still don't get it, do you? He stepped closer, his dark eyes unreadable. Someone didn't want you to remember last night. You think that just happened? Camelia's throat tightened. I drank too much, that's all. No. His voice was steady, absolute. It's not. Something about the certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. She wanted to believe this was just a drunken mistake, that she had made an impulsive decision, and all she had to do was undo it. But something about Nico's unwavering certainty, his patience, like he was waiting for her to catch up, was starting to unnerve her. Camellia crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. Let's pretend for a second that I believe you, that someone wanted me to forget. She met his gaze. Why? Nico studied her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he grabbed the folder from the table and handed it to her. She hesitated before taking it, fingers brushing against his for half a second. He didn't pull away. Swallowing hard, she flipped the folder open. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. There were documents, contracts, reports, papers stamped with official-looking seals. And then her eyes landed on something that made her stomach drop. Her name. Listed under a contract she didn't remember signing. What is this? She whispered. Nico exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. The reason I can't let you leave. Camelia's grip on the papers tightened. What the hell does that mean? He nodded toward the documents. Keep reading. Her eyes scanned the words, trying to make sense of them. At first, it seemed like a standard business contract, a merger of some kind. And then, her breath hitched. Clause 17. In the event of a legal union between Camellia Laurent and Nico DeLuca, all prior agreements between the Laurent family and external parties become null and void. Camelia's pulse roared in her ears. She flipped through the other pages, her fingers shaking. More legal jargon, more clauses she didn't understand. But one thing was clear. Her marriage to Nico wasn't just a personal mistake. It had legal weight, financial consequences. And if she walked away from it now, something big would be undone. Camellia lifted her gaze, panic creeping into her voice. What is this? Nico's expression hardened. Insurance. She shook her head. For you. Her stomach clenched. I don't understand, she said, her voice raw. This contract, it's like my family was involved in this. Nico was silent. Camelia's hands tightened around the papers. Did my father sign this? She demanded. Still, Nico didn't answer. A cold realization washed over her. Her father, Philip Laurent, was ruthless in business. He controlled multi-million-dollar ventures, signed deals that changed industries overnight, and played a game most people didn't even know existed. But what game had he played with her life? She felt sick. Camelia turned, shoving the papers back at Nico. Tell me the truth. Nico caught her wrist gently but firmly. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. I am! She yanked her hand back. Then tell me why this contract exists. Tell me why you're acting like my memory loss wasn't an accident. Tell me what the hell I just walked into. Nico sighed, rubbing a hand along his jaw. Then he said, voice low and measured, Because, sweetheart, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very dangerous enemy. Camelia's breath hitched. Her world tilted on its axis. She took a step back, pulse hammering. Who? Nico's gaze darkened. Your father's biggest rival. And now, yours. Her chest squeezed. That's impossible. My father made a deal that put a target on your back, Nico interrupted, voice steady but unyielding. This marriage, it wasn't just your mistake. His lips tilted, but there was no humor in his smirk. It was your father's backup plan. Camelia's heart pounded. Memories flickered at the edges of her mind, conversations with her father, his casual remarks about securing alliances, about never showing weakness. Had he been talking about this? Had she been a pawn in something bigger? She swallowed, her throat tight. You knew, she whispered. Nico's expression didn't change. I did, she inhaled sharply. Then why the hell did you marry me? Something in his eyes flickered, something sharp, something real. I told you, he murmured. I've waited too long for this. Her stomach twisted. She didn't understand him, didn't understand the way he looked at her like he knew her, like this was personal, because it was. Camelia backed toward the door again, pulse frantic. I need space. Nico didn't stop her, but as she reached for the handle, his voice cut through the silence. You can run, Cammy, he said softly, but you won't be safe. She turned to him, breath shaky. Nico's eyes were unreadable, but his voice was deadly serious. You are my wife now, he said, and whether you believe it or not, I'm the only one keeping you alive. The weight of his words settled over her like a storm cloud. Camelia swallowed. Then, without another word, she opened the door and stepped into a world she no longer understood. Chapter 4. A Love Story. She can't remember. Camelia barely remembered how she got from the hotel to Nico's penthouse. 1 minute, she had stepped into the hallway, determined to put distance between herself and the man claiming to be her husband. The next, she was sitting in the back of a sleek black car, the city lights blurring past, her thoughts tangled in knots. She hadn't even asked where he was taking her, hadn't argued when Nico, cool and composed, had followed her into the elevator. Hadn't resisted when he'd murmured, It's not safe for you to be alone, Cammy. Not yet. She should have fought harder, but the truth was she had nowhere else to go. Her father, he was clearly involved in whatever mess she'd just uncovered. Her friends, silent. And Nico, he was the only one giving her answers, no matter how much she hated them. The penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek modern furniture, a city skyline that stretched endlessly beneath the night sky, and yet Camelia felt like a bird in a gilded cage. She turned, arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching as Nico loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. Whiskey, she muttered. Nico looked up. What? She exhaled. I don't know why, but I feel like I've seen you drink that before. A pause. Then slowly, Nico smirked. Not bad, he said. Maybe your memory isn't completely gone. She ignored the way her stomach tightened at the look in his eyes. Tell me the truth, she said, her voice quieter now. Before last night, had we met before? Nico stilled. For the first time since this nightmare began, she saw something flicker in his expression. Hesitation, or maybe something deeper. Then, finally, he spoke. You don't remember, do you? Her fingers curled against her sides. Remember what? He took a slow sip of his drink before setting it down. Then, without warning, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few taps, he handed it to her. Camelia hesitated before taking it. A picture filled the screen. Her chest squeezed. It was her, smiling, bright-eyed, happy. She was at a rooftop bar, dressed in an elegant black dress, her dark hair pulled into an effortless updo. And beside her, looking entirely too comfortable, was Nico. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't guarded. He was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world. Camelia's breath caught. This is fake. It's not. She tore her gaze from the screen, shaking her head. I don't remember this. Nico leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. That night was real, Cammy. She swallowed, pulse unsteady. When? 4 months ago. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just a drunken mistake. This wasn't the first time she'd met Nico DeLuca. And yet, her mind was blank. Her voice wavered. How did we meet? Nico's jaw tightened. Then, softly, he said, You came to me. Her heart pounded. Why? You were looking for answers. She frowned. Answers to what? He hesitated before stepping closer, his voice gentler now. Something happened, Cammy. Something that made you question everything. You didn't trust your father. You didn't trust your own life. And you came to me. Her skin prickled. That doesn't make sense, she whispered. It will, he murmured. Her hands clenched into fists. Then tell me. Nico studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, instead of answering, he reached for his phone again. This time he scrolled through his photos before handing it back. Camelia looked down and felt the air leave her lungs. Another picture. This time she wasn't just sitting beside Nico, she was leaning into him. His arm was draped over her shoulder, his fingers tracing slow, lazy circles against her bare skin. And she looked soft, like she belonged there, like she'd let herself trust him. Her hands trembled as she lowered the phone. Nico's voice was quiet. We weren't strangers, Cammy. Her breath hitched because suddenly she wasn't so sure. Because if she had trusted him once, if she had chosen him, then what had changed? Why had she lost her memories of him but no one else? And more terrifyingly, why did he still look at her like he wasn't ready to let her go? The weight of the room pressed down on her, thick with tension. Camelia exhaled sharply, setting the phone down. I need space. Nico didn't move. Cammy, I need time to think, she cut in. Alone. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes, but after a long moment he nodded. Fine, he murmured. Take all the time you need. Relief flooded her. Then, I'll be in the next room, he added. In case you change your mind. Her stomach twisted, because deep down she had a sinking feeling that the truth, the real truth, was something she wasn't ready for. Chapter 5. The truth starts to crack open. Camelia didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in the massive king-size bed of Nico's penthouse, staring at the ceiling while the city lights flickered against the darkened walls. The photos haunted her. Her own face, smiling, leaning into Nico, looking at him like he was someone she knew. Someone she trusted, but she didn't. Not now. And yet, something in her chest tightened when she thought about the way Nico had looked at her tonight. Not with victory, not with manipulation, but with something far more dangerous. He cares about me. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Because if she had once trusted him, if she had once loved him, then why had someone made her forget? The next morning, Camelia was still exhausted when she padded into the kitchen, drawn by the scent of coffee. Nico was already there. He was wearing a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, the top 2 buttons undone. He looked like he belonged in a goddamn magazine. Camelia hated that she noticed. Morning, wife. His voice was a lazy drawl, but his eyes were sharp as they swept over her. She scowled, grabbing a cup of coffee and ignoring the way her pulse jumped at the way the word wife rolled off his tongue. Don't call me that, she muttered. Nico smirked. Why not? It's the truth. She took a sip of her coffee, glaring at him over the rim of her cup. He was enjoying this too much. But then his smirk faded and his expression turned serious. Did you sleep? Camelia hesitated, caught off guard by the gentleness in his tone. No, she admitted. Nico sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Figured. Silence stretched between them. Then, unable to stop herself, she asked, Did we really meet 4 months ago? Nico looked at her, something unreadable in his gaze. Yes. Where? His lips pressed into a thin line. A charity gala, he said finally. You came alone. You looked like you wanted to be anywhere else. Camelia frowned. She had attended plenty of galas with her father. He always made sure she was seen, the perfect daughter of Philip Laurent, but she rarely went anywhere alone. Something tugged at her memory, a vague sensation, a flash of lights, a rooftop view, a drink pressed into her hand. I went to him that night. She had been the one to approach Nico, but why? She gripped the coffee cup tighter. Why did I go to you? Nico exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. You wanted to know the truth. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Camellia had barely processed Nico's words when his phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, glancing at the screen before swiping to answer. Yeah, he said. His voice clipped. She watched as his expression shifted, sharp, unreadable. When? He asked, his jaw tightening. How bad? A beat of silence. Then, find out what they know. Call me back. Camelia's stomach twisted. As soon as he ended the call, she crossed her arms. What was that? Nico looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. Nothing you need to worry about. Her temper flared. Wrong answer. He sighed, setting his phone down. It's security. There was an attempt to access my private files last night. Her heart pounded. Files about what? He hesitated. Then, finally, he said, you. The air left her lungs. Someone was digging into her past, into her memories. Panic clawed at her chest. Nico, tell me the truth. What the hell is going on? His jaw clenched. You think I don't want to tell you? His voice was quiet, but laced with frustration. You think I like watching you suffer through this, knowing you don't trust me? Camelia's breath hitched. She didn't expect him to sound so pained. Then, before she could stop herself, she reached for his phone. Cammy, but she was already moving, scrolling through his messages, and then she saw it. A name. A number. A message. We need to talk. It's about Camellia. Her stomach dropped. She didn't recognize the number, but Nico did, because his whole body had gone rigid. She looked up at him, the air between them charged. Who sent this? She whispered. Nico exhaled. Someone who might have the answers you're looking for. Her pulse roared in her ears. Then let's meet them. Nico hesitated. For the first time since this nightmare began, he hesitated. And that terrified her more than anything else. Because if he was worried, then the truth might be more dangerous than she was ready for. So far, Camellia has uncovered secrets, lies, and a marriage that feels far too personal. But the truth is only beginning to crack open, and what comes next will change everything. Will she remember the past Nico refuses to let go of? And when she does, will she still want him? Part 2 is coming next. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the twists, the slow burn tension, and the love story that refuses to be forgotten. Let me know your thoughts so far. Are you Team Nico, or do you think Camellia should run? Stay tuned. Things are about to get even more intense.